Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring both of our recently supported Beast Warrior archetypes, the Tri-Brigade and the Lunalights. While these two may seem to have quite different game plans, there's a ton of synergy here, particularly with the release of Mouser, now letting any two Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast bodies bridge into the Brigade. This lets us shore up some of Lunalight's weaknesses, like having pieces get banished and lacking follow-up if their towers do somehow get outed. In exchange, the Tri-Brigades get a much scarier end board, so if resolving a revolt makes you feel alive, then let's get started. Starting with the Tri-Brigades, the gimmick here is having effects trigger when sent to grave, and also being able to link summon by banishing materials from the graveyard. Just lots of value for link plays, but they do lock you into the beast types pretty hard. Fractal is the glue that holds this whole deck together. You can discard him to send any level 4 or lower Tri-type monster from deck to grave, which acts as a starter and an extender and doesn't need our normal summon to do either. He, like the other main deck brigades, can also banish materials from grave to summon a link from the extra deck once per turn. Then we need something to send off of Fractal, and in engine that's going to be Kit most of the time. When sent to grave, she can send another Tri-Brigade card to just help you fill the grave for Necrolinks, which she can also do, but she rarely hits the board to actually do so. Nerval is normally what you set off of Kit. He adds a brigade name from deck to hand, and same thing, if he ever hits the board, you can banish to summon a link. Nerval normally adds Karis, who has no grave effect, but can special summon himself by sending another monster from hand to grave. He's the one you're most often actually using the graveyard link effect of. Then in spells, we have the new Tri-Brigade Hammer. This is a good starter and extender that the deck very much appreciates. It's a quick play that lets you do one of two effects, and you can do each once per turn if you happen to draw multiples. It can add any other archetypal spell trap, which you can do in draw phase to avoid droll, which is pretty cool. That's great because our other spell traps are situational, and this lets us play kind of a toolbox of one of each of them. The other effect lets us banish Tri-Brigade cards for a link summon, not just monsters. Importantly, this ignores summoning conditions, which makes the previously nearly impossible to summon Bucephalus much more realistic. Starting with our one-ofs, we have Standoff. This can be a starter if we have a Tri-type monster to discard, such as an Errant Fuelos. Doing so allows us to add Fractal, to discard, to send, etc., etc. That makes Hammer a starter since it can search this up. It has a less important effect as well, where if it gets destroyed, the opponent can't attack that same turn, but it's mostly just a slightly conditional starter that we can search when we need it. Then we have Rendezvous, and Rendezvous's main effect is bad, giving our linked monsters 700 attack for a turn. However, in grave, it can banish to protect our linked monsters from destruction. So I play one that we can foolish at various points in our combos, since we have plenty of ways to do so, and that strengthens our end board even further. Worst case scenario, you open Rendezvous, you just use it to get it in the grave for the protection effect next turn. So, it's not that bad. Worst case scenario, it just costs a card in hand that could have been another better card. Lastly, we have one trap, but oh man is it a doozy. Tri-Brigade Revolt lets you summon back any number of Tri-type monsters from grave or banishment, then immediately link summon with them. Not only does that get us a link on the opponent's turn, but it triggers any sent to grave effects from our Tri-Brigade monsters and lets us unbanish our Lunalights to use them again next turn. It's just a single giant bomb of a card, and if it resolves, the advantage it generates us can be insurmountable. Then we're into the Lunalights. Gold Leo is probably our best starter and adds a Luna when summoned, then you have to discard a card. Often you can just use it as a makeshift foolish burial. It can also recur a Lunalight monster as that monster gets sent to the graveyard, so any of our foolish effects let us just add a card to hand and circumvent droll, which is pretty cool. Hound isn't a starter on her own, but if sent to grave by Fractal or anything else, she can summon a Lunalight straight from deck. However, that locks you out of the extra deck until you conduct a Lunalight fusion or otherwise get rid of what you summoned. That's the major choke point in this deck, and you have to be very, very careful not to lock yourself or let the opponent lock you off of that effect. She can also banish from grave alongside a Lunalight Fusion to negate a spell trap, which is just cool extra layered interaction that you can reset with Revolt. Black Sheep can discard herself to add a Lunalight monster from grave back to hand, or add Poly from deck. She's basically just here to search Poly. Like, we need that to do combos, so it is important to be able to find it, and you can search Black Sheep to search Poly, which is cool. But you can also use her as fusion material to add a Lunalight name from grave back to your hand, and notably nothing here is once per turn, so sometimes you can add multiple things over the course of a turn. Then we have Martin, who can bounce a Lunalight card from field to hand to summon herself from hand or from grave, but she does banish when leaving the field. Again, less of a problem here than in Pure. If sent to grave, she can also add a Lunalight spell trap, and we have a number of good options there. Normally, she is your search and discard off of Gold Leo to search a spell and then set up her bounce and summon. Kaleido Chick is one of our most important non-starter cards to get into rotation. She can Foolish a Luna from deck or extra deck to get that card's name until the end phase. Notably, the Foolish Burial is at cost, and the effect is the name swap. That means even if she's negated, you still get to pay the quote-unquote cost just to send a card. Just be aware that this counts as a cost and not an effect, which means that none of the Lunalights sent trigger their grave effects, because all of the Lunalights specifically have to be sent by a card effect. It's a bit of a weird rules lawyer thing, but it still lets you fill the grave, add something off of Gold Leo's return, etc., and it is a soft once per turn, so if you can Reborn Chick, you can use this multiple times. Her other effects are less important, but if sent to grave by card effect, say as fusion material, you can add a Poly back from grave to hand. If she's banished, you can also make the opponent unable to activate effects in the battle phase this turn. Speaking of Reborning Chick, meet her best friend Tiger. Tiger is a pendulum monster, though we never actually pendulum summon. While scaled, she can reborn a Lunalight from grave but negate its effects. Doesn't matter for Kaleido Chick. You can still Foolish Burial. Notably, this is a soft once per turn, so considering we have multiple ways to bounce cards, like with Martin, we can use Tiger to reborn a bunch of times in one turn. Each time you bring back Chick, you get another Foolish Burial, and then you can bounce the Tiger and bring back either Chick or even just something else as a body, do it again, bounce it again, go, go, go. Tiger's monster effect rarely comes up, but if she's destroyed, you can reborn a Lunalight from grave. Pretty cool just as a side effect, but not terribly important. Lastly, for monsters, we play one Wolf. Wolf is our other pen scale and lets us fusion summon by banishing from grave when she's scaled. We have other ways of doing that, but one Wolf lets us use her as a backup plan just in case the opponent manages to lock you out of the primary Miracle Fusion by some means. You never really summon Wolf, but if you somehow do, she gives all of your Lunas piercing, which is, you know, it's cool. Onto our spells. Masquerade is a continuous spell that lets you Foolish a Lunalight once, which means it's a starter. Then if you fusion summon while it's on field, you can add back a Polymerization from grave to hand. Then you have the option to send a card from hand to grave so that the next time you fuse this turn, you can banish materials from grave for it. This is our better way to Miracle Fusion since it comes attached to a starter, but again, Wolf is useful as a backup. Then we have Lunalight Fusion, which is a searchable polymerization that lets us use a monster from extra deck as material if the opponent has an extra deck monster. So basically if you're going second. Otherwise, it's just a polymerization that you can search off of Martin. Perfume is the newly searchable extender that reborns a Lunalight, then you can banish it from grave and discard a card to add a Lunalight from deck to hand. That's normally how we get Tiger into rotation. We play one polymerization to search off Sheep and recycle with Masquerade and Chick. One Foolish Burial acts as a starter or extender. 3 Tankies can search Fractal or any Lunalight besides Wolf when activated, then sticks around to give all of our stuff a paltry 100 attack boost. Then we're on to non-engine. We have 14 here, which is a bit light, but we make the most of it with big swingy haymakers. Bualos is useful for a couple of things since it's a winged beast. Then we play 3 Eclipse because Eclipse lets us dodge targeted negation such as an Imperm. Then it acts as an end board piece that all of our own boss monsters are immune to. We play one DD ground as our thrust target going first. It's a very, very good backup plan right now situated in this current meta. And then we're on to the extra deck. But before that, I want to mention two things. One, heavy polymerization is very, very good in Lunalights, but only if you're going second. And a lot of lists main one copy just in case, but I'm not going to lie. They're 20 bucks a piece and not necessary to the game plan. You can play them if you have them, or don't if you don't, and it doesn't change the deck too terribly much. Double Dragon is a classic Tri-Brigade end board piece that can bounce a monster by sending a card to grave. We just don't have the room in the extra deck here. Our extra's super tight and our end board is much better than pure Tri-Brigade even without Double Dragon Lords, so we don't necessarily need it. It's card number 16 in a 15 extra deck. Same with Garura. We would love space to play it because you can send it off of Bucephalus just to draw a card, but it would be number 17 and it doesn't make the cut. In our extra deck, we play Almirage, which turns Kit and Nerval into starters. It can also protect something, so sometimes you can leave it on the end board, but oftentimes you'll just tribute it after using it to get something in the grave to free up space. Berejit can summon a Tri-type from hand, then when sent to grave, she lets you draw one and put one back on the bottom. Mouser is our new link to and bridges anything playing relevant types into the Tri-Brigade engine. When link summoned, you can foolish 2 Tri-Brigade cards from deck or extra deck, which lets you send Kit, Nerval, Rendezvous, or some of our upcoming links, but she does lock you into Tri-type monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. That's why we play 14 out of 15 cards in the extra deck as Tri-type monsters. Then when sent to grave, she can also flip a monster face down, so she's a good choice for Revolt to get some extra disruption out of it. Note that her effect of Foolish 2 only triggers if she's link summoned, not if she's special summoned. It's not ignition like most of the Tri-Brigade monsters. You have to link summon her. That means that if you use one of our main deck Tri-Brigades to banish 2 to summon her, it will not trigger that effect. Do not make that mistake. It will cost you the game. Then we have Cross Sheep, which lets us reborn a monster when we fusion summon, which lets us summon back a Tri-Brigade body for the link from grave effect. Bearbrum is a necessary evil. She lets us discard 2 to summon a banished monster, which is normally just too steep of a cost, man, but sometimes you have to. More importantly, when sent to grave, she adds a Tri-Brigade spell trap, then places a card on bottom of the deck. The issue is that locks you into only Tri-Brigades for the rest of the turn, so the point is to use her at the very end of the combo as material to search Revolt. Triheart must be linked with 3 monsters, so you cannot Tri-Brigade him out, but he's Baguska at home. He swaps everything on board to defense position and is unaffected by them. Rugal can summon back a monster from grave, but bounce it on end phase, basically his follow-up that you can use to trigger the effect of Shurag. Shurag is our big boss monster and normally what you summon off of Revolt. When summoned, or when another monster is summoned, you can non-targeted banish a card on field once per turn. He's also useful to send off of Mouser since he lets you add a Tri-type monster from deck to hand with a level less than your number of banished monsters, which is why we play 2 copies, one to send, one to summon. Bucephalus needs 3 Tri-Brigade spell traps engraved to summon, which is basically impossible turn 1, but that's okay because this Link 5 is our closer. He makes it so the opponent cannot react to our special summons, and when any monster declares an attack, he can banish himself and the opponent's entire board. That just clears the way for a turn 3 OTK. Lastly, if sent to grave, he can send something else from extra deck. People use him to send a Garura to draw a card, but again, we just don't have the room. Note that because Hammer ignores the summoning conditions, you can summon out Bucephalus without having to have the 3 spell traps in grave already. Remains to be seen if that's worth doing turn 1, but, you know, maybe it'll be worth it in some situations just to prevent people from responding to your revolt. Then we're on to the Lunalights. Perfume Dancer is our newest fusion and the only card that can search perfume. She can also bounce to summon from hand, which resets Tiger, and can banish from grave to drop the opponent's attack to go in for the kill. Saber's here to send to grave and can banish to pump a Lunalight fusion by 3000 attack for the turn. Leo Dancer used to be our big boss, but now is just here to send to grave as material to summon our new big boss, Liger Dancer. Liger has a steep cost, but is unaffected by all non-Lunalight effects, even our own things like Tryhard. At 3800, she's also pretty tough to out in battle, and can send a Lunalight from extra deck to grave once per turn to wipe the opponent's board. So you send Saber for the wipe, and then you can banish Saber on your next turn to make Liger Dancer 6800, and because she can attack twice every turn, the opponent is almost certainly down for the count. Last up is our Lone XZ summon, Tiger King. He sets tanky upon summon, which is pretty good on its own, but then can also detach a material to negate all monsters on the board, so he is a must-answer threat going second. And that'll do it for the deck profile. Let's go do some combos. Okay, before we start combos, there's a couple of things I want to point out. One, we need 2 blanks for basically any combo we're doing in this deck. These are both hungry archetypes for discard fodder, so just keep that in mind. It is hand intensive. 2, this is kind of an all roads lead to Rome type of deck. We're basically just focused on putting Gold Leo on board some way, and then from there we can always do full combo. So I'm not going to show too many, only 2 combos. Just be aware that once you get used to what you're trying to do, it should be pretty intuitive. So we're starting with Gold Leo here, and obviously we're going to normal summon. That allows us to add Martin, discard Martin to grab Masquerade. Masquerade can dump Silver Hound. Silver Hound allows us to special summon Kaleido Chick from deck. Kaleido Chick can dump Sheep, which we can add back so that we can discard it again for polymerization. Then we can use Poly to go into our Perfume Dancer to search Perfume to add back and add back the Poly off of Masquerade, discard our first blank so that we now have a Miracle Fusion live. So now we're going to summon back Kaleido Chick and use it to dump Leo Dancer from the extra deck so that we can use it as a Miracle Fusion target. Then I use Martin to bounce back Masquerade, because that gives us just one more discard fodder piece because Masquerade's fully spent this turn. Then we can use the other effect of Perfume to discard the Masquerade to go get Tiger to bring back an extra material. Doesn't really matter what you bring back. We can then bounce it with Perfumer, go into Cross Sheep, go into Farigite, then we can Miracle Fusion into our first boss monster, which triggers Cross Sheep to bring out a body. We don't have a Tri-Brigade body engraved, so we just grab Hound so that we get the extra material. And then we can use the Hound that we brought back along with the Cross Sheep itself to go into Mouser to allow us to bin Shureg and Kit. Shureg allows us to add Fractal, Kit dumps Rendezvous. We can then use Farigite to summon out the Fractal to banish 2 to grab Mouser. We can use Tiger again to bring back an extra material. Go 3 for the Scareclaw Tryhard. That allows us to search a spell trap, but it does lock us into Tri-Brigades for the rest of the turn, thanks to Bearbrum. So we grab Hammer, and then we can use Hammer to go fetch Revolt, just to put an extra name in the body for later, and then use our last 2 materials to go into Rugal. So this gives us our Lunalight Tower / board wipe, our Baguska at home. Rugal can bring a card back that will back to hand on end phase. We've got Revolt set up so that we can just like blow the opponent out of the water at any point. Revolt can summon a bunch of good stuff from banishment like Kit and Martin and Kaleido Chick and all that. And then we can link a bunch of stuff into the Shurag, which will banish a card on the opponent's turn without them being able to really respond to it. Just much stronger end board than the old Tri-Brigade one, which was just Shureg pass, basically. Shureg or Revolt and pass. We got a lot more going on now. Cool? Cool. And then the only other combo I wanted to show you is the jankiest possible one that we have. This one is going to feel like it wastes a whole bunch of resources and spins its wheels a bit, but trust me when I say that it is just as good as all of the other ones and gets us there. I forgot to mention in the deck profile that we actually have 19 one-card starters thanks to Almirage being able to just pitch Kit or Nerval and get us going from there. So we're going to start with Kit. So we normal summon Kit, go into Almirage. That triggers Kit to send Nerval. If you started with Nerval, you just send him, and then either way you add Fractal, which allows you to bin Silverhound. Silverhound lets you summon Leo. Leo lets you add Martin, pitch the Martin. Martin grabs Masquerade. We can activate Masquerade, but we can't do Silverhound this time. So we have to just go straight for Black Sheep, add Black Sheep back to hand, go into Polymerization, bounce Masquerade with Martin to summon her so that we have 2 materials, but then immediately we have to activate the Masquerade again because we're immediately going to fusion summon and we need Masquerade to add the Poly back to hand and let us do our Miracle Fusion. Same thing though, we can go grab the Perfume. Perfume brings back Gold Leo. We can banish it to go get Kaleido Chick because we actually haven't managed to access Kaleido Chick yet. Like I said, pretty janky situation, but it does work out. Use 2 materials to go into Ferrigite so that we can special summon the Kaleido Chick from hand. Use her to dump our fusion so that we can do our Miracle Fusion. Use a bunch of materials to go into Cross Sheep. Then we can Poly, summon out Liger Dancer. That triggers Cross Sheep to summon back Fractal. Fractal can banish 2 to get Bearbrum out. Then we can link Fractal plus the Cross Sheep into Mouser, dump 2. That actually lets us get Tiger off of Shureg's effect so that we can do some reborning. That lets us go into the Scareclaw Tri-Heart and search Revolt, and then we just set the Revolt and pass. So it's not quite as good, but Rugal isn't a terribly important end board piece anyways, so this is pretty much just as good as the first combo. Even though we had to kind of spin our wheels and do some weird things to get there, we still have Revolt, summon 4, go into Shurag, get a ton of value, banish something. We still have our Floodgate, we still have a board wipe / tower, all that good stuff. Still works out, even though it's the jankiest version of the combo. Cool? Cool. And we're back with closing thoughts on our Tri-Brigade Lunalight deck. So, I mean, I've already mentioned for the most part what I think about it. We got 19 1-card starters. That's a lot of 1-card starters. Most of them are not normal summons. That's a big plus. I feel like the 2 decks complement each other's weaknesses quite well, since Tri-Brigade is a little bit of an older archetype, and its top end didn't really get stronger with the new support. It just became a lot more consistent, and it was already pretty consistent. So the fact that we can use the Lunalights to empower its top end while simultaneously making the Lunalight stuff more consistent and being able to recycle resources, which is something that Lunalight is bad at on its own, they complement each other very, very well. That said, is this better than pure Lunalight? Maybe. Honestly, I want to say no, but like losing Baguska hurts quite a bit for Lunalight, but if you have one giant unbeatable tower, you're probably in a pretty good spot, so I don't know if this might be better than making the second one. It's the loss of Baguska that hurts more than anything else, because he's a fiend, so you can't really summon him in this deck, even though we could put 2 4s together. That is possible to do. We just couldn't really summon him very easily. So overall, I don't know if this is better, I don't know if it's slightly worse than regular Lunalight, but I think it's on a pretty similar power level, which is pretty cool, just to be able to play like an older fan favorite, and play it pretty competitively nowadays. The only other thing I want to mention is that the ratios in this might want to be adjusted. I'm not sure. I haven't played with it enough. So I wouldn't mind having a second Nerval and Kit. We have so many cards that discard that I don't really mind opening one of these. The issue is just that both of the engines are quite big already, more so Lunalight than Tri-Brigade, but just in general they're both pretty big. Which means we don't have a ton of space for non-engine without making the deck pretty big, which, to be honest, you probably could play this at 60 and not lose too much sleep over it, but I don't know, I wanted to keep it pretty small, so 46 has felt quite good. There's not really hard bricks. The worst thing to see is like Rendezvous and or Wolf for each of their respective engines are not great. And there are other spells you could play in Rendezvous' spot, but I like the extra protection specifically for Tri-Heart, because he can't really be outed by monster effects, and then if they do manage to rip like a Raigeki or something, Rendezvous still doesn't let him get outed easily. So I like it, even though it does suck to just like open. It just puts you down a card, and this deck does take a lot of cards. It is hand hungry. But anyways, that's going to do it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. We're going to maybe try some Genesis stuff pretty soon, so look forward to that. Cool? Cool. Bye-bye.